Hello, my name is Wildstag, and thank you for tuning in to another used book rant. Today, we're going to be discussing this book, Beast in the Garden. I don't know how well you can see it. There you go. Beast in the Garden by David Barron, subtitle, A Modern Parable of Man and Nature. Interestingly, the title image it uses, there you go, it is cited as being from Daniel J. Cox, Getty Images. What stood out to me about that title page is that it's actually the cover image of another book I have on my shelves, The Animal Dialogues by Craig Childs. This is a used copy I've had since 2009 at the earliest. It was one of the first used books I bought from Coes that is on this bookcase, so it has some sentimental value, which is why when I saw that image on the title page of The Beast in the Garden, it brought back some fond memories, and I knew that this book was gonna be good. I don't know that that's necessarily a good metric that people can use, but just the fact that it is about a subject that interests me, the mountain lion in the modern West. I bought this book at Cortez Books. I have the bookmark I got from them here, if it'll focus. Cortez Books in Cortez, Colorado, Southwest Colorado. 2018 was also the summer, and Cortez Books, the same bookstore where I bought Nature Noir, which I covered earlier on this channel. Right off the bat, I'm telling you I had a really good experience with this book. I bought it for $7, and I've read it several times since. It was worth the investment. Right before the prologue, this has a map of the Front Range in Colorado, as well as closer map of Boulder and its vicinity. These two maps at the front of the book also have a few inlets that are marked on the first one. See map on page 136 and see map on page 199. The Boulder and vicinity map also has an inlet that says see map on page 173. And that is because each of those smaller maps focuses on a specific incident. Specifically, each of these inlet maps has a title. The first one, Travels of the Coal Creek Canyon / Magnolia Lion. It also has a few markers on the map listed domestic animals attacked, with the earliest being November 30th, 1989, and the latest being February 4th, 1990. It was killed that same day. And so right off the bat, and I don't think I discussed it already, this book was published in 2004, but it really covers the events of like the late 80s and very early 90s. The second inlet on page 173 details Linda Walters' jogging route, June 20th, 1990. And lastly, Scott Lancaster's jogging route, January 14th, 1991, on page 199. What this book is about is two things, really. The subtitle states very succinctly that it's a modern parable of man and nature. The cover has a blurb that says, the true story of a predator's deadly return to suburban America. I don't think either of those really does this book justice, though, because it's the red blurb on the cover is supposed to pull you in. It's sensational almost, whereas the subtitle on the title page is almost too mechanical. The praise on the back of the book states, if you think the West has won, the frontier conquered, wilderness subdued, and wildness lost, think again. Howard Burks, National Public Radio. And some of the other praise at the start of the book, before the title page. Okay, I didn't plan this specifically, but the last piece of praise on the page facing the title page states, "Anyone who cares about large predators and their future survival should read this book. Harley Shaw, wildlife biologist and author of Soul Among Lions, the Cougar as Peaceful Adversary." So, Soul Among Lions, the Cougar as Peaceful Adversary is a book published in 1994, and I have it. I mean, that's really the simplest way to put it. So that's a neat little rabbit hole to go down. Looking at the front matter, the back matter, without even delving into the content, I have this whole network of authors referencing other authors, or authors, the cover design using a famous mountain lion picture that reminds me of another book I own. It's just off of that, you can really see that there's a reason I have this sentimental attachment to it. And that all together, that adds to the experience. I did mention I don't like how mechanical the subtitle is, the subtitle presented on the title page, and I don't like that red blurb on the cover page. So let me, in my words, explain what the book is really about and why that matters. The Beast in the Garden is about the encroachment of man into wild areas and how wild areas push back. Specifically, Boulder, Colorado is the setting of this book. And Boulder, Colorado really had a boom in the 80s and 90s, as I understand it. And at the time, and more so even now, Boulder, Colorado is a hotbed of liberal policy in Colorado. And what that means in relation to this book is that Boulder, Colorado had a lot of green spaces, public land, preserved land. Green spaces meaning parks. A whole network of parks that animals, deer and foxes and raccoons and anything else native to that area could walk through and never really have to touch pavement, or rather, would rarely have to touch pavement. To a lot of homeowners, that can seem Edenic, that you are moving to a place in tune with nature. But here's the thing. Deer are nice to look at. Elk are nice to watch. Raccoons, foxes, birds of prey, passerine birds, all these different animals are part of one larger community. And though it wasn't obvious when Boulder started developing, it did have its apex predators. Mountain lions prefer certain kinds of prey. But when there are a lot of humans and a lot of pets and a lot of cars, additional interactions happen with mountain lions. So in this case, the more cars, the more vehicles, the higher the likelihood of a mountain lion getting injured. And the more pets, cats and dogs, domesticated animals that don't have as much of a self-defense instinct, the more likely it is that a mountain lion will look at those as easy prey. And any carnivore, any apex predator is an opportunist. And so these mountain lions, they have preferred prey in the sense that they generally prefer to hunt deer and elk. But when they can, they'll eat other things. And when they start eating pets, humans notice. And they push back. And when an injured mountain lion can't even hunt that, they go for the next best thing. A mostly defenseless animal, humans. And that's what this book is for the most part about. Humans are encroaching on mountain lion territory. And those mountain lions walk into suburban areas. And they start preying upon pets. And attacking humans mostly in self-defense. Some of them start actually preying upon humans. And that is where the crux of this issue lays. The book follows Michael Sanders, who is the resource specialist for Boulder County Parks and Open Space. And Chapter 5 really is where his efforts to track down mountain lions in the area comes to a forefront. And it reads, Lion and bear info sought. Have you seen a mountain lion or black bear recently? These elusive animals are rarely seen, but chance encounters by residents can provide important information on the size and location of these large mammal populations. If you have observed either species, or if you have noticed their signs, tracks, scat, etc., please contact Michael Sanders, Resource Specialist, Boulder County Parks and Open Space. At the bottom, the posters provided Michael's phone number. The rest of that chapter goes into describing how many reports of sightings he got and the systematic nature in which he went about confirming or denying those sightings. It says on page 61, in the following weeks, Michael continued to receive phone calls and fill out observation report forms at an astonishing rate. September 15th, 2 people reported a cougar on Boulder's popular Mesa Trail in the late afternoon. September 20th, a man spotted a cougar by Gross Reservoir in the early morning. Observer was in vehicle, Michael noted on his form. Lion walked toward car, ran into woods. The number of lions sighted surprised Michael, but their behavior did not. The cougars were acting the way textbooks said they should. The animals were seen mostly on the outskirts of town and were therefore avoiding areas of dense human settlement. And the lions were most active between dusk and dawn. Cougars tend to hunt and move during periods of low light. They are often termed crepuscular, active around morning and evening twilight. This spatial and temporal pattern of behavior was comforting. The lions were most active where and when most people weren't. There was little danger of humans and cats crossing paths in a hazardous way. I mentioned this book in a previous video, but Isabella Lucy Bird, the author of A Lady's Life in the Rocky Mountains, is described somewhat, and her travels described somewhat in this book, partially because she returns to a land of big cats, the Malay Peninsula, and she writes about the birth of man-eaters. The author here describes that Boulder in the 1980s, like Java a century earlier, had experienced a coming together of culture and nature. As people cleared forests for homes, planted gardens in the city, and thereby enticed deer among the dwellings. Of course, mountain lions are not nearly as deadly as tigers, and that was fortunate for Boulder, because by early June of 1990, events had reached a critical point. The city had entered a cougar plague. The last chapter, The Myth of Wilderness, really summarizes the thesis of this book, and it states, America is engaged in a grand and largely unintentional experiment. As wildlife invades suburbs, and as suburbs invade wildlife habitat, we are changing animal behavior in unexpected and sometimes troubling ways. It is a widespread phenomenon, applicable to deer, geese, coyotes, raccoons, bears, and many other creatures. But seldom have the consequences been so dire, and rarely has the behavioral shift been so well documented as in the case of Boulder's lions. Jim Halfpenny and Michael Sanders, in the data they collected, captured a species in transition. They identified the moment of change, the beginning of a trend. Jim Halfpenny's prophecy at the Division of Wildlife's 1991 symposium has regrettably proved true. Lion attacks and close encounters have become a recurrent fact of life on Colorado's Front Range, as evidenced by periodic headlines. Boulder man stabs mountain lion with sword to free St. Bernard. Runner survives standoff with lion. Man escapes cougar attack outside his rural home. Bicyclist gets best of cougar. Savvy rider puts bike between himself and cat. And in 1997, Colorado suffered its second fatal lion attack, 30 miles from Boulder, just across the divide in Rocky Mountain National Park. 10-year-old Mike Maidema was mauled while hiking down the North Inlet Trail a short distance ahead of his family. By the time Mark's parents arrived on scene, the cat, a pregnant lioness, was dragging their son into the bushes. It would be a gross exaggeration to say that cougar attacks have become commonplace. They have not. Dogs, bees, and snakes kill many more humans each year than mountain lions do. So do mosquitoes and deer, given those creatures' roles, respectively, in disease transmission and automobile crashes. Even in Colorado, residents are far likelier to die from a lightning strike, avalanche, or skiing mishap than a puma attack. In fact, if one considers the actions of serial cannibal Daniel Blue during the Pikes Peak gold rush of 1859, the state can boast more documented cases of people being eaten by other people than by mountain lions. Yet, for all their rarity, mountain lion attacks are far more common than they once were. Boulder is no longer alone, nor will the West be for much longer. Whether guided by a divine hand or biological imperative, the mountain lions are sending a message. They are signaling a change of era, not just to those few who have had direct encounters with them, but to America as a whole. The cats, emboldened and proliferating, are heralds of a new stage in the nation's evolution. A changed relationship between man and nature that will require an attendant adjustment in cultural attitudes. This book chronicles that period of time in the late 80s and early 90s in vivid detail. The encroachment of mountain lion upon suburbs and suburbs upon mountain lion habitat. It goes into depth. It does not lay blame on humans or on mountain lions. Mountain lions are creatures of instinct and habit. They are beings of nature. Throughout the 20th century, Americans were conditioned to want certain things, including the white picket fence, the freestanding home, an acre of land. All of these things come together in nearly deadly ways. The Beast in the Garden does a great job of educating the reader about the history and contemporary nature of the interaction between mountain lions and humans in the Colorado region. And like I said, I've read it several times, and I really enjoy the book. And I think, especially living in New Mexico, this is the kind of book that needs to be read. It's not enough to just read those signs at a trailhead, mountain lions sighted in the area. People need to know why that matters, and this book does a good job of it. I love mountain lions, and if I ever see one, I would consider myself blessed. And in one sense, I dread it, but in the other sense, I dream of such a moment. Everything I read about them indicates how majestic and almost distinctly American these creatures are. Any chance to read more about them is a chance I'll gladly take. So, yeah. The Beast in the Garden is a fantastic book, and I strongly recommend it to anyone who wants to learn about this kind of interaction between nature and man in the western United States. My name is Wildstag, and thank you for tuning in to another used book rant.